Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Bud Burke, and this is part 4 to my beginners chord building series of videos. So in this one, we're going to tackle the augmented chord. So we've got a short version and then a longer, more complicated version. The short version is take a major chord and raise the fifth of that chord up by one tone, by sharpening it by one tone, and there you have your augmented chord. That's it, you're done. The longer version, we're going to relate it to how it fits into the grand scheme of the major scale or the minor scale. So in order to do this, we have to alter the major scale because the augmented chord does not naturally exist in our regular major or minor scale. So most of us don't normally start learning scales and then immediately go into altered major scales. The usual progression is you learn your major scale, you learn your minor scale, and then if you're not going to start learning the modes, you learn, and like especially in my case, I learned first the harmonic minor scale and the melodic minor scale. So these are just altered versions of the natural minor. Both of those altered versions have a raised seventh note of the minor scale. And if we start looking at the minor scale from the point of view of the major scale, the seventh note of the minor scale is also the fifth note of the major scale. And that's exactly what we need to produce this augmented chord. It's a raised fifth note. So what we're going to do is take the major scale, learn where the minor scale is in comparison, then turn the minor scale into the harmonic minor scale, and then from there, we take that harmonic minor scale and bring it back to the major scale, which would give us our major scale with the sharp fifth note. All right, here we go. The first thing we need to know is where the minor scale starts in comparison to the major scale. So let's take our major scale starting on the A note, so 5th fret of our low E string. Okay, so let's do this as fingering 1. Okay, so we know that the minor scale starts on the 6th note of the major scale. So let's count that up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this is where our minor scale starts, right? So if we were to just endlessly play until we run out of strings, our major scale, but start and end on this note. This is an F sharp note. Okay, so now we're playing the minor scale, right? And more specifically, when we're doing it this way, we're playing it as fingering 3, but starting on the A string. So that's one note on the lowest of the strings of what we're doing, at least. 3 notes on the next 2, and 1 note on that 4th string. Okay, so it's fingering 3 that we learned of the minor scale. Okay, so let's go back to our major scale and do this as fingering 2. And that way we can try to figure out where does minor scales fingering 1 start on our low E string. So fingering 2 of the major scale. Okay, let's count that up again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's pay extra close attention to that one. 7 and 1. Okay, so extra attention on these 3. The 6th, 7th, and 8th note. So we know this is the 8th note, this is the first note. 8th is the octave of the first. So let's put our pinky on the original starting point. So back to the 5th fret, leaving our other fingers in the same spot as they were in comparison to our pinky. So now we have our first note, our 7th note, and then our 6th note. Okay, so that's where our minor scale starts. This is an F sharp. So another way of thinking about major versus minor, where do they start in comparison to each other, is that the minor scale starts 3 frets lower, or aka a minor third interval down from where the major scale starts. So wherever your major scale starts, say you started it up here on the 12th fret, go down 3 frets. All right, there's our major scale. Let's go down 3 frets. 1, 2, 3. And there's where our minor scale starts. Okay. And so these are called relative majors and minors, where the two scales, they share all the same notes, but they have different names, because in our, back to our A major, and then the minor scale starting on F sharp minor, or F sharp. So you can think that the A major, its relative minor is F sharp, and vice versa. F sharp minor, its relative major is A. Every major scale will have its own relative minor, and every minor will have its relative major, and there'll always be some different set of letters. Okay, so we now know where our minor scale starts, and we were able to do it as fingering 1. Okay, so here's step 1 complete. Step 2 is we have to alter this into the harmonic minor scale. So that is taking the minor scale and raising its 7th note by 1 tone. 1, 2, 3. So now I'm starting my count where the minor scale starts, not to where the major scale starts anymore. 1, 2, 3. But let's also make a side note that 3, that's where the major scale starts. So we're looking at the same thing from different starting points here. So you can think of it from where the major scale starts and where the minor scale starts. Looking at the same thing in 2 different ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Normal 7 is up on the 2nd fret of our D string, which is our E note. But for the harmonic minor, we got to raise it up by 1. So we're going to call this E sharp. And for all of you that know any better, most of us would just call this an F note. But this is just music theory rules that of the diatonic scales, they have to go through every letter of the musical alphabet. So we have F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D. This has to be an E note. It can't be F, because we already have F sharp. It can't be F and then F sharp, and then there was no E. So we got to call this E sharp. A little off the subject, but relevant to just general music theory stuff. All right, so we're going to call that E sharp, and then we're back to the root of the minor scale again. Okay, so that's step 2. We learned the harmonic minor scale. The formula for this one, we're going to start on the minor scale, compared to the minor scale, would be whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. That's our formula for the natural minor scale. Our new formula for harmonic minor: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, minor third. Look at that one. Minor third, half step. Okay, so again, that's whole step, half step, whole step, minor third, half step. Okay, so there is step 2. We got that one under our belt. So if we were to apply our chord building formula to this new scale, to the first note, the third note, and the 5th note, that's still just giving us a minor chord. What we're looking for is, where does this augmented chord fit in? Well, I already know, because I've gone through everything already, that the augmented chord starts on the 3rd note of the minor scale. Okay, so we already made a side note that, 3rd note of the minor scale, that's where the major scale starts. So now let's start looking at all this stuff back from the the viewpoint of the major scale. Okay, let's do our minor scale in fingering 1, but let's count it as notes of the major scale. So we know that this is the 6th note of the major scale. 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that turns out to be a raised 5 of the major scale. And back to 1, or back to 6 again. So 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, raised 5, 6, 6. Okay, this is going to be useful. So now we can go back into fingering 1 of the major scale. And let's just play it like we normally would, but when we get to that 5th note, we'll raise it up by a fret. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where regular 5 would be. We'll move it up 1. And then we're seeing that minor 3rd on 1 string. Raised 5, 6, 7, and back to 1 again. Okay, took us a couple steps to get there, but we did it. This scale is also known as the Ionian sharp 5 scale. Ionian just being another name, or it's more official name for a major scale, Ionian, and then sharp 5 because the 5th note is being raised up by 1. So that's where your Ionian sharp 5 name comes from. Okay. So then our formula for that, so just just to fill in all the blanks, is whole step, half step, minor 3rd, half step. Okay, so that's like just doing the same thing we did on that minor scale. We just left off the first 2 because we're starting up in the 3rd. So this is where the minor scale starts, and then we're getting that initial half step. I'm sorry, whole step, half step. Okay, whole step, oops, half step, minor 3rd, half step, whole step, half step. Okay, so fingering 1 for our new scale. We finally did it. Okay, fingering 2. So let's just count it up and take it the easiest way that I can think of and just count 1, 2, 3, 4, raise that 5th note up by 1, and then continue everything else regular. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Oops. Okay, there's fingering 2. And then fingering 3. Let's do the same thing, but now with our 1 note on the low E string, and then 3 on the next 2, and 1 on that 4th string. So 1, 2, 3, 4, be a regular 5. We'll raise that up by 1, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay, there's our 3 fingerings of our new Ionian sharp 5, so or 3rd mode of the harmonic minor scale. Okay, now we can take our 1st note, our 3rd note, and our 5th note, and that'll give us this new augmented chord. Okay, so take our 1st note, skip the B, take the C sharp, so we should have 5th fret, 8th fret, 5th fret, 9th fret. So normally we'd have the 7th fret for that E note, but we're going to have the 8th fret for the E sharp. Okay, so going from the root to the 3rd. If you've seen the other videos, you should now know already that this is a 1-string major 3rd interval. Okay, and then going from the 3rd to the 5th, that's a 2-string major 3rd interval. Okay, so the augmented chord is major 3rd and another major 3rd. So let's compare that to the other 3 chords that we learned. The major chord was major 3rd, minor 3rd, perfect 4th. The minor chord was minor 3rd, major 3rd, perfect 4th. And then the diminished chord was minor 3rd, augmented 4th. And so this one so far is major 3rd. What would the 4th be? It's probably going to be the opposite of what the diminished was, right? So going from the scale's 5th note to the scale's octave, what it looks like is another major 3rd, right? It's just down a string, back a fret. However, because there are 4 notes between this note and the octave, 1, 2, 3, 4. So So we gotta call this a fourth. It's a fourth of something. And so, okay, let's do this interval on one string, shall we? Okay, so we know this is scale degree 5. That's our octave. Okay, so that's our regular perfect fourth, going from the 7th fret to the 12th fret, but scale degree 5 got raised up by 1, so now it's the 8th fret to the 12th fret. So what just happened to this interval? Our fourth, it just got smaller. 5 fret distance. We moved the lower note up by 1. Now it's a 4 fret distance. And what happens when we take a perfect interval, such as the fourth, and make it smaller? It becomes diminished. So you've now learned that the augmented chord not only does it have a major third, and then finishes off with a diminished fourth, but we've also learned that the diminished fourth is identical in sound and appearance to a major third. So that is another instance where you're looking at the same thing just from two different ways. Anyway, so there is our first fingering of our augmented. We're doing it as an arpeggio, so just one note at a time. Okay, there you have it. Fingering 2, the scale. So the first note and the third note, got that 2-string major third. Okay, then third note to 5th note, there's a 1-string major third, and then that octave, use the exact same location as it was in fingering 1. And it looks like a major third, but diminished fourth. Okay, and there's our fingering 2 of your augmented arpeggio. Let's do fingering 3. Okay, so if you have seen the other chord building videos, we know that fingering 3, we get each note on a different string, so we can actually play the whole thing as a chord. So let's think of the intervals that build up this chord, and we don't even have to think about the scale, right? We just think, all right, here's our root note. We know that from the first note to the third is a major third over 2 strings, and then we know that going from the third to the 5th, it's also going to be on 2 strings, another major third, so 2 major thirds in a row. And then we know that going from the 5th to the root is our diminished fourth, which also looks like a major third. And there is our augmented chord. I think of it as like being these little steps. It's like a staircase going down. And there you have your augmented chord. So one other thing to learn in regards to the augmented arpeggio or chord is you can also think of it as coming from the augmented scale, and that scale is just nothing but whole steps, just stacked whole steps upon whole steps upon whole steps. So to do that scale, if we were to start it on A, we'll just do a whole step. From there, we'll do a 2-string whole step. So I just think of it as doing whole step, then down a string, up a fret. And then that's all the notes from that scale, and you're starting over again. So also quite the opposite from the diminished scale. That scale had 8 notes, so 1 extra compared to the major scale. This one has only 6 notes, so 1 less. And there is the augmented scale, also known as the whole tone scale. And you can mess around with that one just to keep it everything as either whole steps or major thirds. Or you can also do let's finish this off by just talking a little bit about the characteristics of this augmented chord in comparison to the other three chords that we know. So we know that the major scale has a root, a natural third, and then a perfect fifth. Okay. We know that the minor scale has a root, a flat third, and then a perfect fifth. We know that the diminished chord has a root, a flat third, and a flat fifth. The augmented chord has a root, a natural third, and a sharp fifth. Okay, and there's how we build our augmented chord based off of the major scale, the multi-step process that finally gets us to that augmented chord. Well, thank you for watching the video. Thanks for learning with me here. And until the next lesson, take it easy.